Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. Really excited to talk to my buddy David Hall today. Very, very timely. We're going to be talking about how to squeeze more juice out of your business, how to monetize more of the stuff that you might be passing on to or not taking advantage of today. Professional real estate investors know that it's not really about the real estate. In fact, real estate is just a vehicle to freedom. A group of over 100 of the nation's leading real estate investors from across the country meet several times a year at the Investor Fuel Real Estate Mastermind to share ideas on how to strengthen each other's businesses, but also to come together as friends and build more fulfilling lives for all of those around us. On today's show, we're going to continue our conversation of fueling our businesses and fueling our lives. I'm glad you're here. Hey, David, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to see you. I'm excited to talk about this stuff. We've been talking about things like this over the past several months with you. You're an agent and an investor, and I think that's becoming more and more popular now. Some agents are coming downstream into investing. Some investors are getting licensed because they see the benefits of that. Of course, in some states, they have to get licensed. That's starting to change a little bit. And you run a RIA club and get some deals and some value out of that, while of course adding value at the same time. And you're starting to do more and more creative deals, and all those things are super timely right now for people that are listening. So excited to talk about that into some more detail.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Hey, before we get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you found your way into the real estate world?
Yeah, so I think like everyone else, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was in high school, and it ruined me for college. So at the time, I wanted to get into flipping. This was in 2008. So I bought my first house when I was 21, went to renovate it. I was hoping it would only take a few months, ended up taking a year and a half. I was hoping I could sell it for 150 and it appraised for 90. So did not go super smooth on my first deal. But we moved into it. And then I pulled a little bit of money out and was able to buy multifamily. I started buying 4 units and 3 units. And being, 22, 23, I didn't have much money. So I had to use some creative options. So I bought one on a credit card. I bought one. I borrowed some money from my retirement account. I borrowed money from family and friends to get money to pay for the land contract down payment, and kind of started scaling from there. And then as the market came up, I was able to sell some properties. I was disappointed with the agents I was working with, trying to, something came on the market that was hot and I wanted to see it. And they, for some reason, weren't thrilled about looking at a $20,000 dump, over and over again. So I ended up getting licensed. And then, other people heard I was licensed, started using me as an agent, and that allowed me to get out of my 9-to-5 job, the money I was making as an agent. So fast forward to now, I'm an agent with a team here in Lansing, Michigan, growing my portfolio and doing a few flips along the way.
That's awesome. Yeah. And those things fit well together, and I think they're fitting better and better together as time goes by. Like I think it used to be, like you said, my wife, when we first started investing back in 2008, within like a couple months, my wife got her license because same thing. We would ask an agent, can you send me comps for this house? Like, yeah, and I'll get them to you in the next 2 or 3 days. And we're like, no, we need these like right now. And you're just like, why are there so much incompetence here? And there's a lot of good agents out there, don't get me wrong, but I think even good agents would agree there's a lot of, not so good ones as well. And it was almost like a necessary evil, but at the time, that's how we felt. And it sounds like maybe that's how you felt a little bit too. But I think over time, you can start to see the value more and more of actually being licensed. So we're going to talk some more about that today. In fact, why don't we just jump into that, like the benefits of kind of being an agent and an investor. And I'll kind of give a little caveat here. This is, well, you may not know this part. For years, I kind of said there's no reason to get licensed. If you're not licensed, if you already are, that's great, but there's no reason to go get your license to get started in real estate investing. And states are different, right? And I always kind of said there's no reason for that. I've flipped hundreds and hundreds of houses. I've never been licensed. And now recently I got licensed because I see some of the benefits of that and being able to collect referrals and all sorts of other stuff. But what do you think some of the benefits of being an agent and an investor at the same time are?
Yeah, so the first thing I'd say is the biggest negative is sometimes you can get sucked into being an agent. And if your goal was to be an investor long term, sometimes the commission checks keep you so busy that before you know it, years go by and you're still just an agent, not actually investing. So that's the downside. But the upside is they do complement each other well, like you said. There's deals that show up on the MLS that I've shown clients that they passed on that I walked through and I was interested in. So if a client passed on it, I have my eyes on it and I can buy it, you know. Same with if you can set up alerts the way you want for the MLS. I like reading through, and sometimes there's certain things that don't make sense in a listing, like it might be 3,000 square feet but be listed as a 1 bedroom. So because of that, it's not showing up on anybody else's radar, but because
Oh,
I can go and look at it, I can tell that, you know, an error was made. Or, you know, if a listing comes up with no pictures, I can look at the last time it was listed and I have access to all the details that other people might not. So I mean, it allows me to kind of pierce through and see more options and potentially more opportunity than I think other investors do, but don't have access to the MLS.
yep, yep. And there's the relationships too, right? Whether they're pocket listings or just some kind of inside information sometimes of something that might be coming up that is some as an agent, either in your office or that you know of, that's like, hey, would you be interested in this before anybody else even knows about it, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so agents are not in Michigan, you're not allowed to have pocket listings for residential. I don't know if it's like that everywhere, but it's you can get fined and get in trouble. But that being said, there's lots of agents I have worked with that might get a landlord who's got, you know, 10 slummy properties, and the listing agent now wants to know, how can I make money off of this without having to list all of these, show all of these, deal with all these tenants and all these headaches. So by positioning myself as an agent investor, there's other agents that recognize me as that. They sometimes reach out and say, hey, before I list this, you know, would you be interested in buying it? And I just bought 6 in December that were all off market, that were all land contract, seller finance, low money down. I think I paid $5,000 down for all 6 houses, and they're all cash flowing. And it was just because some agent didn't want to list it and he called me first.
Yeah, that's awesome. How do you build up those relationships where agents will come to you first? How do you create that awareness that you're an investor and an agent to just agents that are really just, agents?
Yeah, so it's about, you know, building a reputation. I think first has to be built on integrity. You know, there's a lot of people that just get their license and then are wait for referrals without really proving themselves. You know,
Right.
so always doing what you say, I think, is important. And then at every staff meeting, every agent meeting, I always tell people that I'm an investor agent and I'm looking for deals. You know, just I feel like every investor should always be telling everybody that that's what you're doing. But
Yeah.
between social media and agent meetings and board meetings at the board of realtors, you know, I just tell everybody that that's what I do. And then, you know, constantly be posting and sharing the stuff that you do. And then eventually the leads start coming in.
Yeah, that's great. I think there's this merge going on of more agents and investors like getting dipping into each other's kind of ponds, if you will. I've always kind of said that I think that a kind of a traditional agent thinks that investors are like slimy, but they all actually want to be one. So sometimes
Yeah.
that's
No,
a
it
way
makes
for them to kind of get exposure is to just work with somebody else that's doing that already, right?
Yeah, and it's depressing to see there's older agents that never invested. They might have helped buyers invest, but now they're 80 years old and they have to keep working because they never kept anything. You know, wholesalers, I feel like it's kind of the same thing, that you
Yeah.
have to eventually buy and hold some of what is coming in and out of your portfolio, your in and out of your inbox, because otherwise you'll look up and yeah, you made all this money, but you got to hold on to some of it. You know.
Right, right. Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about the benefits of being an investor and getting your license. I mean, one of those obviously is if you can't buy it, you could potentially list it or have a referral for somebody else to list it, right?
Yeah, when it comes to marketing, you know, anytime someone calls as a seller, I can help them in, you know, whatever way they need. You know, so if they're calling, they want retail prices, great, I can help them list it and make a commission. You know, if they need cash fast, I can give them a cash price and, you know, buy it and wholesale it or flip it or whatever. So anytime you pay for that marketing, the phone rings with someone that's going to sell a property, you can take that lead down in one way or another if you're licensed and, you know, have multiple tools to help them.
Yeah. And talk about, because one of the things that you said up front is the same reason why I've always told people like don't get licensed. You don't have to get licensed. Of course, that differs in different states, but is the fear that they'll go that path and spend a lot of time handling traditional listings and cannibalize themselves in terms of their time, at least on the investing side. So, any tips on how to get paid for listings without having to actually, spend all your time doing it?
I mean, so I think the best advice would be to hire help as soon as you can. You know, having an
Yeah.
admin or someone that helps you on the back end stuff. So you can still be the face of everything, but if you get a listing, you turn it into your office admin or your assistant, and they can schedule the photos and, you know, organize the showings and all of that. So
Yep.
even if it is a small, you know, because some of these some of the marketing you get are for little dumpy properties that aren't going to make you a lot of money as an agent. But if you can have someone else take care of the $15 an hour type of tasks and still, make 1,000 or 2 or 3 off of a listing that didn't require much work from you, then it can still be, it can still make sense.
Sure. Yeah. And sometimes when you have a team, you can just basically hand it off to somebody on your team as well, right? Like another agent.
Yeah. And they might get thrilled with that. Yeah. Or if you have agents on your team, you can give them all your leads potentially, and then just get a referral. So you're making less off each deal, but you could still be making really high per hour dollars.
Yep. So the next thing we're going to talk about is kind of creative finance. So obviously creative finance has become really hot right now because it allows people to maybe monetize some deals that they wouldn't have otherwise. And in your market, I know in Lansing, it's very much an affordable housing type market in terms of, rents and mortgage payments. And so creative finance works really well in markets like yours, where the cost of you being a owner financing a deal and having their monthly payment be relatively close to rent is easier in markets like that than certainly like California or whatever, most of the coastal markets. So talk a little bit about what you're doing from a creative finance standpoint, and what others should be thinking about, and how to do more of this in their business as well.
Yeah, so the sweet spot I think that I'm finding is there's a lot of the marketing that we would do, or the leads that we would get, would be kind of gray area, not a cheap enough deal to where it would make sense to wholesale it, but not enough room on it based on the amount of work it would need to make it, top dollar a flip. So it's kind of stuck in between. And so for those ones, I've been offering a seller finance deal as well. And it kind of depends on how you word it with the seller. But I say, hey, how about I just take over your mortgage payments, give you a couple grand up front, and then I'll just make your payments for 5 years, or I try to stretch it out as long as I can. And sometimes the payments I'm making to the seller are pretty minimal. If you're buying it for a lower price and you're stretching out for a 30-year amortization at a low interest rate, that payment's going to be rather small. So then I would take the pictures and we would do the bare minimum, which is just typically cleaning it, fixing whatever's broken, and maybe painting it, and then listing it on Craigslist as a lease option. The idea being the option consideration that you would get as the down payment would go towards them purchasing the property, so they feel like they have some ownership. Also, that down payment hopefully gives me all my down payment money back that I have into it, and all the money I have in the rehab. So essentially, the goal is to try to get into it and out of it with no money of your own left in the deal, positive cash flow each month, hopefully a little bit of money up front in your pocket with a potential balloon, down the road that you'll get the rest of it. So some of them, typically the balloons on the back end, are where you would make the most money, but it's yet to be seen on if these buyers who couldn't get qualified for a mortgage in the first place will actually be able to commit, but if it seems like an easier model for me to scale, since it doesn't require any of my own money.
Yeah. And you're like I said, you're in a very affordable market. And so mixing in that affordable market thing and I know a lot of lower price point markets tend to have a lot of, more prospective buyers, right? And then I think on top of that, just the historically low interest rates over the last 10 years really make kind of assuming those mortgages or doing a sub twos really kind of is in your favor, right?
Yeah, and a lot of the sub two, like the lease options that I'm selling on, are even lower than market rent, and it still allows to make a few $100s a month and get some money up front. And now it's kind of a win-win for everybody, in my opinion.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I think more and more, like obviously advertising costs, competition has gone up, inventory is way down, and so as investors we have to find more and more ways to kind of monetize deals that maybe in the past we would have not been able to we would have just kind of passed on it, right? But now we can find some ways to monetize those using creative finance techniques.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So the one last thing we're going to talk about is you run a RIA club, and so I don't run a RIA club, but I run a big online network with our podcasts, and have done that for many years. And there's been a lot of benefits of having a network of people that kind of come to you for advice or listen to you one way or another. And the benefits of doing it locally, like in a RIA group, is you can find deals through people and lots of other things. What are some of the big benefits that you've gotten from your RIA club?
Yeah, so we meet here twice a month, so once for coffee and then once in an evening event, and it allows me to build relationships kind of at scale. I'm trying to leverage my time a little bit, so if I can meet 10 or 20 people in an hour instead of meeting everybody one-on-one. You get some benefit there. And then whenever we have a speaker cancel, it forces me to get up there and do my own presentation. So not only does it help build my personal, speaking skills, but it also makes me seem like the expert in my area. So if anyone has a house that they need to sell, or that they, want to buy an investment or something, I think I am top of mind in those areas. Then the coffees that we do typically is the week after we do our evening event. And that's, again, there's a lot of beginners that come there that want to flip their first house or want to buy their first rental. And so if I have, wholesale deals or deals that I know are coming up as listings, I kind of have my own private pool of buyers that I can tap into and say, hey, if you're looking for a flip, hey, I got one coming. This one will be perfect for you. And so now I'm able to kind of wheel and deal with no competition.
Yep. Yep. And you can, does your RIA club primarily attract just investors, or given the fact that you're an agent and some of the stuff we've already talked about, are you educating some agents on how to get into investing as well? Or is there some of that going on as well?
Yeah. The last coffee we had 10 people, and 8 of them were agents that were looking to scoop up some business, but we walked out of that meeting, and I got some leads from some of those agents because they didn't know what to do with this crappy house, or, hey, there's a tenant that's not paying. What would you do? And hey, do you want to, co-list this? Can you help me? So there's lots of opportunity that comes just by putting yourself out there, and running a RIA group makes you the go-to person when it comes to investing in your market.
Yeah. Yeah. I was talking to somebody the other day. Of course, all this has been really weird over the past year with COVID, right? But there's been this proliferation of massive Facebook groups, right? And in my experience, when you're in them, it just all becomes a blur, and it's kind of the same thing over and over again, the same questions and all that, which is fine. But I think a lot of people are really hungry, especially over the past year, for like a true physical connection, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like having a Facebook friend is not the same as standing in a room and talking to somebody for real in real life, And I think there's pros and cons of social media stuff for sure, but I think that a lot of people that ran RIA clubs have shut them down, or they just stopped running them over the past year, obviously. But I think the time is right now. If you're not running a group, or you have a group, to kind of lean back into that, because people are really craving physical relationships, like real life, shaking hands and having conversations over at a meeting, or over a happy hour or coffee or whatever, right?
Yeah, and I mean, nothing beats face to face and talking to people.
Yeah.
The last 10 deals I did, I think I met all my private investors at this local RIA group that I run, and it wasn't because I built some solid relationship with them necessarily. It's just that I was the repeat face there every month, and over time they grew to know, like, and trust me, and then we were able to do business together.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I do think that face-to-face stuff is so much better. Like people, especially since it's so much of it's gone away, like people, it's easier to kind of climb that hill, if you will, of building relationships, I think now more so than in many years, because so many people have relied on social media, but it just doesn't feel as genuine as somebody that took the time. I mean, there's this law of reciprocity, right? If you create a RIA club or a community for people to come into, and you add value to them and share value, then at some level, some of them feel some obligation to work with you. And you've, of course, built up trust in a unique way, because they know you put effort into making that happen, right? So I think those.
Yeah, it adds a lot of credibility too. If you're putting yourself out there and saying, hey, I'm a repeat guy here, you can trust me. It's not like, if a deal comes up from some guy they've never heard of, or they're going to most likely lend to you because they know you, and they know that you're gonna have to save face. You can't screw them and then keep coming to your meeting.
Right. Yeah, there is some truth in that. If you're putting yourself out there in terms of a group, you have a reputation to uphold, and they know it. It gives you more credibility for sure. Yeah. So speaking of kind of in-person meetings and getting together with other like-minded folks, you've been a member of Investor Fuel for a little while now. Would you mind just kind of sharing a brief testimonial on your experience of being a member of the group?
Yeah. I mean, the great thing about the group that I found is that there's lots of different types of investors. So if I have a question about anything, everyone's been pretty open to helping me, and even beyond the group, their guys give me their phone numbers, or we text back and forth, or jump on Facebook calls and things. So if I have a question about something that's some crazy oddball, before it was like, I don't even know where to go to ask this question, let alone get an answer. But luckily with the group, and everyone seems to be, pretty open to sharing, and I can post on there a question that might be off the wall, and someone will recommend somebody else, or have at least be able to steer me in the right direction. So I think it's allowing me to grow faster than I would otherwise, because I'm able to get answers, answered faster.
Awesome. I appreciate that. I'm glad you're in the group. Yeah, we've kind of built this culture of giving and sharing knowledge, and hopefully not holding back. And we're all like a bunch of petri dishes, trying stuff and kind of reporting back to the group of like, don't ever do that again, or I tried that. Here's how I would do it. If I had to do over again, here's how I would do it. So that's one of the beauties of our group, I think. So awesome. I'm glad you're a part of it. David, if folks wanted to connect with you, you're in Lansing, Michigan, but if anybody wanted to learn more about what you're doing or potentially find ways to work with you, where would they go?
Oh yeah, our website is achievelansing.com. And then my email is dave@achievelansing.com. And then I'm on Facebook and Instagram and all those things too. So you can find me there. Facebook is probably where I'm on more often than I should.
I hear that. Yeah, we'll add links down right down below in the show notes here for those of you that may be listening and couldn't write that down. So make sure you check us out on investorfuel.com. By the way, if you guys have not yet applied or talked to us about Investor Fuel, and you're an active real estate investor, there's a lot of members of the group that have had dramatic improvements in their business and the quality of their life by just getting in the room around the right people that are thinking bigger and aren't afraid to take challenges to try to learn and grow. And we do that all together. So we'd love to talk to you. We actually just added 2 groups, which we call the cash flow groups, that are aimed at commercial type investments, namely multifamily. And that's in partnership with Corey Peterson, the Big Kahuna. So go to investorfuel.com and you can learn more. David, hey, thanks for joining today, my friend.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Yeah, thanks for sharing your insights. And I think everybody can benefit from doing these things more, building networks and communities, potentially getting licensed, and using some more creative finance techniques in their business for sure. So everybody, appreciate you a bunch. Hope you got some value today. We'll see you on the next show. Are you an active real estate investor? If so, and you want to latch on to the power of surrounding yourself with over 100 of the nation's leading real estate investors, all committed to building stronger businesses and living richer, fuller lives, you should jump on a call with us to learn more about Investor Fuel. Simply visit investorfuel.com to get started.